go there by your side. When you're looking for a hero, like a shadow, I go carry your matter for head, yo. I go there by your side. Isn't that what we're saying to our children as parents? That we will carry their matter on our heads and we will be by their sides. And being on the side of your child is not necessarily cloning the child to be like you, but actually influencing the child so that the child can be all that the child is supposed to be. Welcome to the Intentional Parenting Chat, and I remain your host, Dimangwobi. Thank you for joining, and I'm excited that you're all here with me. So on Monday on the show, we started a series on influence, being how you can get the best from your children. And so that Monday we shared 3 things. The word influence has 9 letters. And in this series, we're breaking down what each of the letters mean and how, if as a parent you can incorporate that into your life, you will be able to get the very best from your child. So last week, what did we look at? Last week, we looked at what influence being integrating your values into your daily habits. We saw how if we're able to live out the values we want our children to have, we will teach them by example to also live by those values. Then next, we looked at negotiate with our children, and we were able to break that limiting belief that when you negotiate with your child, you're belittling yourself as a parent. We came to understand that negotiation means having a dialogue to reach an agreement. And so when we're able to get our children to negotiate with us, we get their buy-in, and it's easier for them to just flow with what we're teaching them. Then we looked at freeing our children so that they can explore and learn. Okay, so those were the 3 things we looked at last week, and I've been getting amazing feedbacks from people who have been tuning on to the show. A mother shared her experience with freeing her child to go in for the Boy Scouts campaign, and she shared amazing feedback that actually made her child to not only to grow, but also she got feedback from the camp masters, which justified or made her feel better that yes, indeed, the work she has been doing with her child has not been in vain. So tonight we'll continue our discussion on that. So tonight we'll look at the 4th thing that influence represents, and that is listen to your child. Many a times as parents, we always have something to say to our children. We always have something we want them to do, one behavior we want them to change, one value we want them to live by, one instruction we want them to apply in their lives. We're always talking. But if you're going to get the best from your child, you need to also listen to your child. And when you're listening to your child, you don't just listen for what the child is saying. Listen beyond what the child is saying to what the child is not saying. Because if you practice empathetic listening, you're kind of putting yourself in your child's shoes. One thing about parents is that we're quick to forget that we were once parents, and so we're also even quick to forget that we are evolving as well as our children. Okay, so we're all evolving. So if you listen to your child, you'll be able to extract amazing feedback that will help you either to rejig your parenting strategies, or to know that this is a time to stop this, or to know that your child is now ripe for the next stage. So we need to listen to your child. A child has needs as well as adults. He has emotional needs, he has basic needs, he has physical needs, he has psychological needs, and all of that. But if you spend all of your time parenting the child just talking, you won't be able to get feedback. It was until my daughter wrote me a letter saying that she was 11, but she had the mind of a 13-year-old. It took me to listen to her to be able to extract that feedback and then to rework the current parenting strategies I was adopting with her at that time. All right, so the next thing you need to do, even as a parent, to get the best from your children. A lot of times, especially for parents who have more than one children, we kind of are tempted to continue repeating the same parenting patterns, the same parenting style, the same parenting strategies for each of our children, but it's not supposed to be so. The parenting strategies that you deploy, it's per child, depending on the unique influence vitals of your child. And so, we're discussing how to influence your child to get the best from him. One of the ways to do that is to understand each of your children's uniqueness, what we call in intentional parenting the unique influence vitals of your child. Do you understand how your child interprets the world? Do you understand how your child perceives the world? You could have a child who is a silent learner, a child who is not given to showing emotions, a child who doesn't talk too much. You're not going to apply the same parenting strategies for that child like you would do for your child who talks too much, who doesn't care what he's saying, and all of that. So even the disciplinary measures, the strategies you use differ from child to child depending on the child's unique code. And so, do you know how your child perceives life? You need to understand that. Do you even know how your child wants to be appreciated? Because if we're going to get the best from your child, you need to learn how to use positive reinforcements. And it's not the same positive reinforcement that will work for child A that will work for child B. So you need to know as a parent, how does my child want to be loved? How does my child want to be appreciated? Sometimes when I speak with parents, I just see them doing generic things. Okay, so when parents want to appreciate their children, probably they just load all of them into the car and drive them to the either to one of the eateries to go buy them a cone of ice cream, or you drive them to the park. That will work for a child that is very outgoing and likes to explore. But what if your child is the indoor child who would rather prefer a book, who would rather prefer a sitting at home? But if you use the same method of appreciation for each of your children, you could be missing it. So you need to understand how your child wants to be appreciated. Some ways that parents are losing influence from their children, it's also their inability to understand their child's preferred learning style. There are some children that are visual, there are some that are auditory, there are some that are kinesthetic, there are some that are auditory, digital, and all that. But if you're going to get the best, if you want to influence your child, really you're targeting getting the best from that child. But tell me, how can you get the best from a child when you're teaching the child in the way that the child doesn't understand? Well, say for example, if you have a child whose preferred learning style is visual, and then you're always hitting the child, you're always hampering that the child is not doing the things that you say orally to that child, you could be missing it. It's not that the child deliberately is out to be disobedient. It's just that you've not understood that your child is a visual learner. And so for that child who is a visual learner, what would you rather do than voicing out your instructions? Would you think of writing it in a chat? Would you think of pasting the chat in a strategic place where the child could see it? Sometimes some parents, could say, oh, your sibling does her chores because I tell her to do it and she does it. For a child who is visual, maybe the reminder that child needs to make the connection with every day is seeing the chores written out visually. But if you do not understand the preferred learning style of your child, you just wouldn't get it. And so you need to understand that, because if you're developing any strategies for your child, it has to be in line with how your child learns best. What else do you need to do, even as a parent, to be able to influence your child and get the best out of him? One thing that is fundamental that as parents we need to do critically, we need to take time out to design and do it, is that we must earn the trust of our children. You don't just get their trust because, yes, you gave birth to them. No, you don't just earn the trust of your children because you've been paying their bills. Sadly, you don't do that. You don't earn the trust of your children because you give them shelter and put a roof over their head. You earn their trust by building your credibility. You need to build your credibility with your child to be able to influence the child. People are drawn to people that they like. People are drawn to people that they know they can take their word to the bank. So if your child does not find you credible, the child will also struggle mentally to process and do the things that you ask that child to do. So can your child trust you? Can your child come to you for advice? Not necessarily because you gave birth to him, but because you have built credibility. So what are you doing as a parent to build credibility with your children? If your child is having difficulty communicating with a friend, can that child come to you to learn communication skills from you? Practically, because the child has seen you exhibit good communication skills, not necessarily because you've been saying it. One thing I want us to take out from this is that our children are hardly listening to us. They are rather watching us to see what we're doing and to see who we are daily becoming. And so for some parents that struggle with apologizing to their children when they do wrong, when you apologize to your child, when you do something contrary to what is the agreement or what is in line with your family values, or when you hurt that child even unconsciously or consciously, you need to apologize. And when you're apologizing, you're making deposits in your child's credibility bank. Every child has a credibility bank, and the amount of deposits you make in that credibility bank of your child will determine how much the child will trust you. And the more you make deposits into your child's credibility bank, the more your child will trust you, and the more you'll be able to influence that child and drive him in the direction that you want him to go. And so one of the struggles that I see parents have is that parents struggle, or rather pretend that they know that they are perfect. But you know what? Your child knows you're not perfect. And the moment you accept that to yourself and know that you're not perfect, you're not pretending for your child that you're perfect. This child knows that you're not perfect. But if you can own up and apologize when you err, then you're teaching your child some life lessons. You're teaching that child, oh, daddy can be trusted, mommy can be trusted, and you're making deposits in that child's credibility bank. And as you're doing that, you're creating an open and honest environment around you where your child can confide in you. And that is what we've discussed today on the Intentional Parenting Chat. We looked at listening to your child, we looked at understanding your child's unique influence vitals, and we also considered that if you want to influence your child, you need to constantly, deliberately make deposits into your child's credibility bank. And the more credibility points you score with your child, the more you earn your child's trust, and the more you can make that child do what you want him to do. There's an Igbo adage that says, Onye nie zuloshi ne yejo babawuzu. That means that if a father should send a child to go and steal, the child will use his leg, and break the door and go there, because the child understands that the father is backing him. That is literally saying that when you make enough deposits into your child's credibility bank, your child will trust you. He will trust that what you're saying is for his good, and he will live out those values that you want. So thank you for being with me tonight again on the Intentional Parenting Chat. Remember, it's still our series on influence, being how you can get the best from your child. We will continue and conclude the series on Saturday. So if you've learned anything, please click the share button and share this with your friends, share with your family members, and together let us raise a more empowered and wholesome generation. I remain Dima, your host on the Intentional Parenting Chat. If you have any parenting questions you would like me to treat on the show, please send it to my mail and I will gladly do that. Till we come again together on this show on Saturday, have a restful evening.